Hello, 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 and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jameelah, and I am a master manifester, and I'm sure you are too because you're watching content like this. The name of this channel is Holistic Manifesting because I believe in the whole body, whole mind, and whole being experience when it comes to manifesting these amazing lives that we are choosing to live, right? What I'm discussing in this video is how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, right? I used to have my email in my bio and people would send me messages and things like that. And I kind of took it out like in the past few months, whatever. But I think about putting it back in. But I got an email a long time ago, which I didn't even see. And I checked way, way later. And someone was talking about how they feel so guilty setting boundaries with people in their lives because they feel like they're letting so many other people down. Well, that's generally how boundaries start. That's generally how they make you feel, right? Saying no to people is a struggle. It's a struggle, especially if you were raised in like codependent environments where people are trauma bonded with toxic family members and stuff like that, because the hallmark of those kind of environments are the lack of boundaries. It means that your personal space means nothing. Your autonomy means nothing. Even your money is not your own boundaries, right? You can't even decide to say, I want to give money for this, but I don't want to give money for that. It automatically makes you a bad person or a person who doesn't care about other people or no good. That is kind of like one of the hallmarks of like people that have a hard time saying no. The struggle of saying no also comes from feeling like you're going to lose something, feeling like you're going to lose access to these people that you depend on, but it's almost like in a trauma bond dependence. It's not even a real positive dependence to where it's a transactional, even exchange, and it's an ecosystem of beautiful energy flowing back and forth, right? It's more of a fear. It's a fear that I'm going to be talked about. I'm not going to be able to be in the in crowd. Everybody's going to feel like this about me. They're going to toss me out. I'm going to be the black sheep of the family and blah, 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 blah. And you know what? Let me tell you, it ain't that bad. It ain't that bad. You feel guilty for prioritizing your own needs. And if you see me looking down, I got notes. I keep notes these days so I don't just run off, right? You feel guilty for prioritizing your own needs, even though your own needs are what is important for you to be able to pour into others. If you're not focused on your own needs and you're not around people who care about your own needs being fulfilled, that means you're around people who are takers. And if they're takers, you're always going to feel like you're bottomed out. You're never going to feel like you're whole and like you have energy and like you're at peace, right? So to saying no is way less about individualism and about being selfish. It's about the necessity of being a whole person that's able to give to others in the real way. You have to be able to say, today I can, today I can't, right? You know what I mean? And I'm so grateful that that's something that I learned how to do really well, because for a while it gave me terrible anxiety to not be what other people expected of me, even in relationships with other people, for them to say that I wasn't showing up in some kind of way that they expected. It just made me so physically sick because I was like, well, then that means they'll probably not want to be around me and all. Once I let that go and let the floodgates do, I was like, let it do what it do. If I can't show up for you and this is the outcome of it, then I just got to live with that outcome. You know what I mean? Because what I found out is that in real positive connections that aren't about bonding people with trauma, that people respect those boundaries. They respect that you need to be a whole person because you give it to them and they give it to you. When people don't respect that, they make demands on your personality. They make demands that you change. They make demands that you see the world differently. They put ultimatums on you and stuff. But it's really them operating in their smallest nature. And then you start operating in your smallest nature by complying with it in hopes that you can appease someone else. But when I tell you, when people are demanding of you like that, you're never going to appease them. So you may as well say the no's that need to be said, struggle with the feelings of not showing up for people. And then once you get over that hump, let me tell you, the anxiety stops, the aggravation, all that stuff subsides because you're no longer fighting what you truly understand is important for your life to be whole. You're not fighting yourself anymore, right? And then the fear of upsetting others is one of those things, or damaging relationships. And this is what I just said a second ago. You can't damage good relationships by having boundaries. Good relationships are defined by boundaries. It's defined by everybody being able to nurture and take care of themselves, right? So it wasn't a good relationship anyway. It was something that was built on a codependency, because the minute you get real about it, that's when all of a sudden everything is falling apart. That means that there was no anonymity in it. There was no peace in there. This is not just personal relationships too. This is even in the workplace, right? I pushed my anonymity in this place that I was doing work for a couple of years ago, right? Because, I mean, not anonymity, my autonomy. I pushed my autonomy in those places because I felt like I was always on edge of disappointing someone. I was always on edge of getting in trouble. I was always on edge of not being where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there. But then I finally just gave in. I was just like, hey, man, I come here, I do this job right. I have a good enough attitude. I have a positive attitude, you know. I may not be like, let's bring in donuts and cookies. Let's have, after hours employee, get-togethers. I wasn't that person. But what I mean is that I had the general positive attitude. Good morning to everyone, come and do the job. And so what I realized is that if I was ever going to be free, I had to be able to move around and be who I was. And sure enough, it was a problem like within a few months. It was a problem really quickly. But what it showed me is that that place was never positive. It was always a toxic environment. It was always a trauma bonded environment, but I was playing into the game of it. So I always was able to fit in. The minute I was like, I got to let this go. I got to let this anxiety go. I got to just be free and be me. Then all of a sudden, you're not doing this. You're a problem. You're this. I'm like, but I'm getting the work done and everything is all the same. But my attitude and energy had shifted. And that's where it changes. And you'll find that happens too. Boundaries aren't fun for people who do not understand that you do not want to have a toxic relationship with them. And then there's also this thing that's the pressure to please everyone. And that's almost everywhere a lot of people go. I feel like this is why when you're in the grocery stores, well, no, that may be something else. I'll leave that alone because that may be another type of behavior. But there's this constant idea that you're always supposed to be doing something for somebody. I was in the store, and sometimes it's subconscious and it gets on your nerves because you didn't mean to have that response, but you had it automatically, and you got to think, wait, how am I losing in this, and why am I making their comfort more important than mine, right? Like, what are we doing? I was walking down the aisle in a store, just meandering because, well, it was just something to do. And there was this old, very curmudgeonly man buying a mirror, and there were people in the aisle, and apparently there were too many people around for him to be in a positive attitude. And then when he came past me, he was like, excuse me. And I was just like, oh, because I thought I saw something big and I got out of the way. But when I got out of the way, I just realized it was just this man in a mirror who was demanding that people step out of his way. And I was kind of like, I wish I wouldn't have stepped out of the way. I was like, I don't need nobody commanding to me like that in public. Like, who are you, this crazy man? But nonetheless, that's that subconscious training of, I must be doing something wrong. I must be in the way. I must be, I must be in trouble. It's kind of that attitude. And this, especially if you grew up in houses to where somebody was always in trouble. Somebody was always in trouble. They were always in trouble for doing whatever it was, right? You were afraid all the time of being on the wrong side of good. And you couldn't even really control what that was because there was no real stable, this is, right behavior, this is wrong behavior. It was sporadic. And if you were brought up in environments like that was just sporadic based on the adults' moods or their temperament or something like that, then you really get in that mode to where you're always feeling like, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? And you got to get out of that space because you can't set proper boundaries if you're always worrying about pleasing other people. Because sometimes some people are unpleasable. And when you know they're unpleasable, you just show up, you smile, and you move on because you're not even going to waste your breath because all that energy belongs to you. Don't waste your time. And so then understanding boundaries is a little bit deeper of a thing, right? You have to define what boundaries are to you and then why they're so important to what you're doing. And then you got to recognize the difference between what a boundary is and then what you might call being selfish is, right? So that's like when people overdo this idea of take me as I am or don't take me at all, whatever. Like it sounds like a boundary on the outside, but what it's really saying is that even if I have toxic behaviors, even if I have parts of me, of my personality that needs to be adjusted or that needs to be looked a little bit deeper into, I'm not willing to do it. I'm just like, take my toxicity as it is, and then, or either just keep it moving, right? And my suggestion would be like, okay, well, if you can't handle what somebody's giving out who's saying that, then just keep it moving. That's always better, right? But what a true boundary in that same situation might sound like is that I'm working on being the best version of me. If sometimes I don't show up that way, you have to excuse me, but I'm not going to be apologizing for who I am and what I'm not doing right all the time, because I'm in the process of improving myself, and you just have to bear with me. That's a boundary. But just telling people take me as I am, or don't take me at all, that's sort of a wall. That's sort of like you just being selfish in that sense, as opposed to saying, I understand that it may not come off to you the way that you want it to be all the time, but I have to do what's best for me right now. Those are two different things, right? And then boundaries are ultimately about protecting your own well-being. If your well-being is not protected, then you don't have anything to give off to other people. I mean, that's just the most basic understanding. Whenever I hear people that's always saying is like, you should give without really expecting anything in return. Yes, I think for really basic things in life, that is a necessity. You go out and you give a homeless person $10, you don't expect anything in return. Although you're getting something in return, you're getting a feeling of knowing that you helped somebody out. And that feeling is the exchange that you're reaping from that interaction, right? But, as a mother, I've never been told by so many people that I should give without expecting. No, I expect respect. As long as you're in this house and I'm providing for you like you're supposed to be doing, then there's a certain level of decorum we need to be having with each other, right? Which I don't have issues with that. But I mean that is the exchange that some people require, for them to go above and beyond. Because the basics are one thing to provide, but above and beyond means, hey man, you can make some demands, you can request some things, and if you're in the right environments, there should be nothing wrong with that. And then boundaries also too are about identifying your own needs and values. So sometimes in order to figure out what you need your boundaries to be, like you're feeling exhausted, you're feeling pulled down, you're feeling like all over the place, and you can't really understand why, you're feeling like you're in a frenzy, is because you haven't taken the time to sit down and decide, what are my needs and values and what's really important to me? You're so busy serving and doing and cooperating with other people that you don't even realize that if you don't do it, somebody else will. If you don't do it, either it'll fall into place like it should. A lot of people think that they're the only ones just holding up big structures and all. No, the minute you take your hand off of it, somehow it'll get done, right? I know that to be true in life. And I'm not saying you give off all your responsibilities, but there are some people that are doing that hardcore. That's like the definition of an absent parent who comes around to reap the benefits every few months and be like, oh, these children are beautiful. They're so well behaved. Yeah, they gave off their responsibility. They're like, somebody will do it, right? Well, we're not talking about going that far. But I mean, in general, in life, when you're feeling depleted and you're feeling worn out, you have to know that if it's meant to get done, it will get done. And a lot of times what we're running around doing and what we think we're taking care of, it's not even important. It's like a default mode of depleting ourselves, and we blame it on whatever situation is sitting in front of our face. But it's always going to be something to hold you back. It's always going to be something to make you feel like you can't do this or can't do that. That's why I don't believe in the excuse of having kids and, being a single mom or a single parent of sorts and not being able to do this or accomplish that. And it's like, no way. There's always going to be something that's going to be sitting there trying to hold you back or make you feel like you can't take care of yourself or you can't put down boundaries. But once you create that space in your life for those boundaries, your life is going to fall in line with it. Most people right now are running around in a frenzy because they haven't even created that space for themselves. And they're saying that it's not possible, but they haven't even truly tried. Anyway, you have to also identify areas where you constantly keep compromising your needs. So I was doing this, early on when it used to be. So when I used to do like co-parenting early on, co-parenting, but it used to be more like on their whim. It was always when they felt like it, when the mood hit, the timing was never right. It would be like, I'll be there at 5 and then it wouldn't show up till 9. It was constant. And I always complied with it and complained the whole time. And the reason why I complied is because I was always desperate for those moments of freedom where I could do whatever I was going to do, mostly write a book, work on something, work on schoolwork or whatever. I can have that free time. And so I was like always playing into it. But what I didn't realize is that when I stopped, I didn't want to stop because I was thinking, well, if I don't take this little piece, then I'm not going to get any time at all, right? And what happened was eventually it crumbled anyway, like the whole exchange being remotely even crumbled anyway. And what I realized is that there was nothing I could do in that time to make that stop happening. And that when I finally took my power back and said, no, the schedule was for yesterday. Today they're busy. They weren't even busy sometime. I had to really say, you know what, you won't get this weekend free, but that's okay, because you're putting down a boundary of saying, if I say by this time, if we establish something, this is when it needs to be. And so what you'll find is that a lot of people don't want to go through that space of you losing, because that's what it feels like. You're not really losing, you're winning, right? But it feels like you're losing because you're just like, even though they came Saturday night and they were supposed to come Friday morning, I'll just let them take the kids because, well, I just need to have that little. No, it's not even worth it by that time, because the whole time I'm being pushed and pulled and wondering what time it's going to be. It's been a mess already. So why don't we just say, let's just take it off the table, and then I can just be free of that, right? And so I was compromising my own needs in that sense. But the minute I was just like, you know what, let's put this boundary down and see what happens. The minute the boundary was put down, all the visitations came to a complete halt. And I'm like, that is so interesting to me. Like, if you can't just be sporadic and do what you want to do, then there's no cooperation at all. And that's how a lot of people are. They want full access to you nonstop. They want to be able to dip and dive into your life and take whenever they choose. And the minute you stick a boundary up in front of that thing, they're like, well, if I can't have you have this randomly, if I can't be involved randomly, then I don't want to do nothing at all. And guess what? You're not losing anything. And a lot of people think they're losing something. This is what people call in relationships when they talk about breadcrumbing. When people show up for some time and then give you a little gift or something and make you feel special by giving you a treat. That's what I call them, like doggy treats. And then they pop out again and go do whatever they've been doing or whatever and come back with these elaborate stories about, yeah, I just needed time, blah, 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 and all these sort of things. And I'm like, no, they're breaking your boundaries, and they're doing it sometimes nicely. And when people do things nicely, they can really be tricky, right? Especially if they come bearing little gifts or little things and love bombing you every time they see you, right? A lot of women talk about breadcrumbing, and a lot of them don't even know that they're being breadcrumbed, right? I mean, this is men and women. It's not gendered. Whenever I say that, I'm just coming from my own perspective, right? You have to realize where you're compromising your needs. If people can't hand over exactly what you expect from a personal relationship, what you expect from a friendship, what you expect from a job, what you expect in those places as far as just basic respect and needs, then you might want to figure out, how do I move out of this space and do something else? But I find that you don't even have to do that. I find that when you create those boundaries, those things that do not fit those boundaries, they will fall away. They don't have a choice but to. And the new things that are supposed to be there will show up. You got to trust that. You got to know that even when it looks like you're losing, you're winning, right? And then understanding your own personal values and like how they inform your boundaries. Like just thinking about all the time, this is what's important to me. This is how I want to live my life. These are the things that I want to experience. And if I'm in places where people don't respect that or they don't expect that, how can I create that life for myself, right? Because you know I'm all about manifesting the lives that we choose and creating the type of experiences that we want to have. When we're too caught up in what other people need all the time, what other people want from us, what other people said that we're doing or what we're not doing or what they're saying about us here, what they're saying, you never live a full life. You never will live a full life, right? So anyway, create those boundaries, let the chips fall where they may, and just go on and live the great life that you know that you're capable of living. Anyway, stop having guilty with saying no. Stop feeling guilty with saying no. Stop struggling in that area, because saying no is going to be one of the most what is called impactful words you can ever say to some people. There are people that I've said no to for specific things. They don't know what I was going through or what was happening in my life. They didn't even ask. And I said no. And guess what? They just went away. They don't call. They don't check on nothing. They don't ask about the kids. They don't ask about the family or anything like that. They call and they'll say, oh, can I have money for something? You say no. Then they permanently don't talk to you. They're permanently bitter against you. They permanently have an attitude with you. Say no to people. Stop struggling with it. And then you're really going to see what those connections and what those relationships are made of. And I'm not saying just say no for fun. Say no when it breaks your boundary. And I will tell you this, it's really hard to establish boundaries in relationships where there's been trauma bonds and there's been no boundaries for a very long time. So when that happens, you're probably going to lose access to people to some degree. And it just is what it is. You got to be ready. You got to be strong enough to handle that, right? Anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.